Welcome back to another week of the Rev MD podcast. We all know how hard it is to find really good front desk folks who really understand the billing process. But what happens when you find really good front desk staff that don't know about the billing process? How do we get them there? And so this week, we're going to talk about some common things that if you have new front office staff is going to be really important for them to understand and for them to wrap their heads around and become very proficient in. And so today we're going to talk about the 6 things that are really critical for your front office staff to know, to understand, to wrap their heads around, to have metrics built around. And so if you do have front staff, certainly share this podcast with them. Hopefully this will be something helpful and informative for those front office staff members who maybe are re-entering that position or are trying to get up to speed around how the overall billing process works and how their role is really critical for that. So again, this is Heather. We own a full service medical billing and coding company called National Revenue Consulting. I'm a physician myself, and I co-own the company with my husband. We are excited to help teach, and really that's what we're really passionate about is even when we take on a new practice, it's understanding what is the process today, what's working, what's not working, what's manual, what can we create as an automated process and really help improve the revenue of the practices we work with. So if you are looking for a new billing and coding company, head over to our website, check out our testimonials, and we also have that free online tool that helps you figure out, what's going on in my own practice so that I can get some tips to improve things. So with that, we're going to kick it off. First things first, number 1, the claims process. Now, this may sound silly, but the claims process is really important for everyone to understand, because if they can wrap their heads around the entire process from start to finish around how a practice gets paid, it's going to be easier for them to play their part. And so from a high level, the claims process is really about having your staff understand everything from when it comes to registering a patient, checking eligibility, when we need to think about prior authorizations, how we determine if we need to do a prior auth, wrapping our heads around whether or not a patient is going to be in network or out of network, some of the nuances around the No Surprises Act, and then getting the patient to the office, collecting those copays and deductibles, understanding, what those are, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then who does the coding, right? So that's the patient heads back to see the physician drops the codes, if that's the process in your office. If it's not, helping them understand, okay, our billing and coding team may be the ones who are doing the coding. What does that look like? And then all the way through, now the claim goes to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse makes a decision. Either they pay it or they don't pay it. And then what that accounts receivable bucket looks like, and understanding the differences between account receivable that's related to insurance claims and related to patient balances, and why it's really important for them to understand their role in looking at patient balances as the patient checks in so they can collect that up front before they head back to see the patient. And so again, really high level, they've got to understand the claims process. And maybe over time, they understand different parts of that in more detail, but high level, your front office staff should understand that. Now, number 2 is really understanding the eligibility process. And I call this out separately because say you have a new staff member, maybe they're new to the healthcare world or they've worked in different parts of the healthcare process, but being in the front desk is new to them. So high level claims process, they'll want to understand. And then you kind of build upon that as they spend time in the office, as they're starting to train, as they're starting to do activities. So number 2 is really important because the front office has a very big role in the eligibility process. And so when I talk about eligibility, it's important for them to understand, what does that mean? Okay, so that means that I've got insurance information from a patient, I've got subscriber IDs, It means that my role as a front office staff is to check and make sure that that coverage is active, number one. And number two, that that coverage is accepted by this practice. Because say they're scheduling a patient and that insurance is active, but it's not accepted at the practice, then it's their job to let the patients know, hey, we actually don't accept this insurance. And they need to understand in your office, do you accept out-of-network patients or do you not accept out-of-network patients? And if you do accept out-of-network patients, what are the forms that patients need to sign so that they know what they are going to be liable for from a cash rate or payment perspective? And it's going to be important for them to understand that there is something called the No Surprises Act, which really just makes sure that patients understand any sort of out-of-pocket cost. There's a lot more complexity around the No Surprises Act. I'm not going to go into that today. That can be a later podcast. But it's important for them to understand high level when things aren't covered, right? Because we're either out of network or it's a non-covered benefit. Patients need to be aware of that. So it's our job to figure out, okay, what is going to be potentially out of pocket for this patient, and let me have a patient understand that. And even in some cases, sign a form that says, hey, I'm out of network. I understand this is going to be cash pay. Here's my estimate of charges. And they actually physically sign that paper. So it's really important, again, as you build upon that knowledge set for these front office staff, that they understand eligibility, they understand the No Surprises Act, they understand where they can be putting signed forms in your EMR so that you keep those on record. Of course, prior authorizations is also part of this. Sometimes that's not a front desk's responsibility. Sometimes it is a front desk responsibility. And so you want to define who does your prior auths. Do you do procedures in the office that need prior authorization? And how do you go about doing that? The other thing that's important with regards to this eligibility prior auth process is how do they get eligibility? How do they find that information out? And while a lot of EMRs are great and they can do maybe 75% of eligibility through their software, it's not always perfect. And so they've got to have access to payer portals. They've got to have, this tenacious skill set that tracks that information down, because it's going to cause an issue on the back end on the billing side, and you'll get a denial. And so if they're struggling with getting eligibility, they've got to get that resolved before the claim is created so that you can interface with the patient, get new insurance information, or potentially have them sign a form stating that they are out of network. And so it's really important for them to understand all of the different pathways, to be able to get that eligibility. So number one is really that PM software. Number two is the payer portals. And number three, lo and behold, is just picking up the phone and calling the insurance carrier. All right, number three, and it kind of ties into eligibility. So when they run eligibility, that's where you're going to see information around copays, deductibles, coinsurance. And so that's going to be the information that allows them to tell the patient before they are seen, hey, you have a $20 copay, or you have $1,100 left on your deductible. I'm going to collect $150 up front, depending on what services you're going to provide. And this isn't perfect, right? Copays are a little bit easier, but deductibles are a little bit harder. You can have a policy where you collect, in general, a rough estimate depending on, is this a new patient? Is it an established patient? Do I have planned procedures? Am I doing something in office? And just have something to where you're collecting a portion of that deductible, so you're not trying to go and chase all of that after the invoice and the claim is adjudicated. So it's important for them to understand, how do I find out a patient's copay, deductible, coinsurance? When do I collect that? And then have them really understand what those definitions mean. And if you guys haven't seen, we do have a patient AR tool, which is really just a PDF of a trifold that you can print for your office. You can hand it out to your patients. You can hand it out to your front staff so that they understand what the definitions of copays, deductibles, coinsurance. So if you do have a patient who's upset that they have to pay, they don't understand why they have to pay, they can explain those things to them. So head over to our website and you should be able to download that PDF, print it for your office staff, print it for your patients. And that's a great way to be able to educate both your staff as well as your patients, because that's just going to make revenue collection easier. So with regards to copays, deductibles, and coinsurance, again, their key role is understanding where they can find that information, collecting it up front, and then helping answer and educate patient questions when they do come up. And you'll want your office managers to be able to keep track of this sort of thing. There should be some way, and it's not in all softwares. There are some softwares that have this really easy, some softwares don't, but it should be really important for them to collect those copays, deductibles, coinsurance, and watch the collection rate for the staff. Meaning, if you know you've got 3 front office staff, how are each of them doing in collecting that money up front? Number 4. Now, we've done some high-level claims process education. We've done eligibility and prior auth. They knew a little bit about in and out of network stuff and how that impacts what patients need to sign. We've talked about copays and deductibles and coinsurance. Now, the front office staff really have to understand how to operate your payment process system. So how are they collecting payments? When they come into the office, again, that should be done ahead of time. How are they physically, managing your process? Is it manual? Are they collecting checks? Are they collecting cash? How are they getting that information into your practice management software? Are they uploading something for your billing team to post? Or are they ideally collecting it and it's automatically going into the patient's chart? Now, those patient payments oftentimes are posted unapplied, right? Because the claim hasn't been made yet, but they're sitting there waiting for a claim to be created and for your billing team to then apply it to that specific office visit. So you'll want your staff to really understand how to collect that, how it gets put into the practice management software so they can be part of that process. Now, number 5, how to check patient balances. This is really important. So if you think about patient workflow, so say a patient comes in, they are scheduling their appointment, we're getting all of their insurance information, we're doing eligibility a couple days ahead of time, we know what we're collecting when the patient comes in. It's going to be really important for those front office staff to know how to check a patient balance. So not only do they know that they have to collect the copay, but say there's a $30 balance due from a prior visit, they know to collect that as well. And so patient balances that are in the PM software are going to be important for your staff to access and get so that they can collect that when the patient's walking in the door. And last but not least, customer service. We all know that customer service is a big part of any business. And so how does your staff manage confrontations, questions, concerns, or even, problems? We all have problems. Problems are going to come up in business, and we all have to be able to make sure that we understand how to manage those problems in a respectful way on either end, right? It could be something that we did on that wasn't on purpose. It could be something, maybe we're behind for the day and having to explain that to patients. So having some sort of customer skill set out there is really, really good. So again, these are kind of the 6 things to start thinking about if you've got new front office staff, if you've got front office staff that are trying to wrap their head around what their role is in the billing process. And all of these things are really important. So if you have some new front office staff, feel free to share this episode with them. And as always, if you are looking for that patient AR tool for educating either your front staff or your patients, please head over to our website and you'll be able to locate that patient AR tool. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't done so lately, please share this with any physicians or healthcare practices that are in your life. We are trying to hit as many physicians as possible. We'll talk to you next week.